By Senator Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island, one of the Democrats who filed that ethics complaint against Senators Cruz and Hawley today. And I want to talk about that in a moment, Senator. But I want to sort of first start with this weird situation we find ourselves in, this impasse over the organizing resolution. Just can you explain what's going on here?
I think it's early power struggle with Mitch trying to find leverage for himself. To the extent that he is counting on people in the Democratic caucus to oppose procedural reforms, I think he's really undermining himself. McConnell is right now. He's making the case for procedural reforms to allow a majority to do its business.
He's essentially, as I understand it, threatening a filibuster of the basic resolution you all need to do business, and thereby using that threat to deny the Democrats the majority and the gavel and committee chairmanships.
Yeah. Well, technically, we would have the gavels, but we wouldn't have the new members assigned to different committees.
I see.
So the floor would continue to operate more or less the regular way under Senate rules with Chuck Schumer as majority leader. But the real rubber hitting the road is in the committees, where the new members aren't seated except pursuant to that order. And so when a Democratic chairman calls a committee into session, we may still have a minority because of the way people moved around. And obviously that's not what the voters intended, not the way the Senate works, not the way the Constitution works. It's just a Mitch McConnell maneuver.
So I guess, to me, what this illuminates is that the question will be called whether you, Sheldon Whitehouse, or other Democrats want it or not, right? I mean, you got the narrowest of majorities, but it's a majority. And the question is, will you be able to govern or not? That seems to me what the deeper issue is here beneath whatever procedural gambit this amounts to.
Correct.
So then what are you going to do?
Well, we have to work through this. The first thing, I think, is that we need to be sure that we'll have President Biden's support and that we're proceeding in unison as we do these things. There are a couple of buckets we can work our way into. One is that on a lot of this procedural stuff, on stuff involving nominations in the executive calendar, we can simply outlast them on the floor. And it's going to take some, physical being there and late hours and weekends and all of that. But at some point, it becomes almost a physical game of just tiring them out until they come to Mitch and say, Mitch, knock it off. I want weekends again.
Right.
And I think we've got to prepare to do that if we need to. We may very well need to. In some cases, it's a matter of, Rule 14ing bills to the floor, even though they haven't been through committee, and start forcing difficult votes on the Senate floor and using the power of the majority leader on the floor to begin to get to work. And there's a great bucket, Chris, of bills that we could probably pass with 70 or 80 votes with a lot of bipartisan support. But Mitch didn't like them either because his donors didn't like them or because they split his caucus, which was anathema to him. So despite they'd have won by great big numbers and helped the American people, he would never let them to the floor. Well, Chuck Schumer can reverse that. He can bring those bills to the floor now and smoke out Republican support and force Republican opposers to actually take a stand,
right,
very often opposed to what America wants. So we are not without tools. We just have to have the resolve and the willingness and the stick-to-itiveness to fight through this. You
announced today this letter. It's signed on by 7 Democrats, and it's quite rare, I will say. It is a letter looking for a formal ethics investigation of your colleagues, Josh Hawley and Ted Cruz, 2 of the leading voices in leading an effort to deny the seating of electors, the legitimately elected electors of states who voted against the seating of those electors, which would have led to, if they were successful, it being kicked to the House and probably Donald Trump being president. Why did you feel moved to take this action?
Well, the Senate has to. If you count on the FBI or executive branch law enforcement agencies to inquire into the conduct of a member of the Senate, they run bang into the protections of the speech and debate clause and the separation of powers. And the Constitution gives the Senate the power to oversee its members. So the Senate has to do something, and the Senate has consigned this responsibility to the Ethics Committee. So that's the place where this gets looked at under the Constitution. And because we don't yet know what Senators Cruz and Hawley did, it's hard to judge how to respond. So we request an investigation so we can find out how close Cruz and Hawley were to the sedition plan and what role they had in it. Was it aid and comfort? Was it aiding and abetting? Was it full-on conspiracy? Was it accessory? What was their relationship with the crimes that we know indisputably occurred within the Capitol? It is absolutely clear that their votes and their opinions are their own and are protected by the First Amendment and all of that. This is inquiring, what else did they do beyond just standing up and voting? Were they involved with the funders? Were they involved with the organizing groups? Worst case scenario, their objections were designed to hold the Senate process open longer, specifically to allow the attack on the Capitol to have a larger window to succeed and disrupt.
You don't have evidence of that specifically. You're saying that's the worst.
No, that's exactly the kind of stuff that I think the Senate needs to know in order to make an appropriate decision on expulsion, censure, discipline, whatever is appropriate at the end of an investigation. As a former prosecutor, I'm a big believer that you don't go to the penalty until you've done your investigation, had your findings of fact, and made a decision on what took place.
The other place where there will be some findings of fact, the presentation, of course, is the impeachment trial. Which today the Senate Minority Leader, Mitch McConnell, whether he wants to admit he is or not, proposed a little bit of a delay until February. And I wonder your response to that proposed timeline.
I am okay with whatever the timeline is. I think that, every defendant needs a chance to hire a lawyer, put their case together, and prepare for a trial. That would give President Trump a chance to do this. And at the same time, it gives us a chance to think through what the trial should look like. I would expect that the House managers will be fairly brief and be smart and expeditious about the way they put in their case. You don't need to learn about Ukraine to understand this case. It happened right in front of us.
Yes.
And that gives us the ability, when we've locked in the timing for the House managers, to limit the time that a Trump defense can waste if they're trying to be dilatory rather than sincerely present a case. And then we pick the time and sit down and go through and get it done. And with any luck, we could even do that in the mornings and legislating in the afternoons. But again, we'll need some more cooperation from Leader McConnell on that.
Famous last words. We'll need some more cooperation from Leader McConnell. Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, thank you so much for making time tonight.
Of course. Good to be with you, Chris.